This whole thing for me is about leveling up. Our industry, we have tolerated low barriers to entry or even celebrated low barriers to entry for a long time. We have tolerated and celebrated the part-time nature of many, many real estate professionals. We've tolerated low levels of continuing education.
The show. I'm your host, Remington Ramsey, and today I have the host of the Jay Pitts Show, Mr. Jay Pitts himself. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Your show used to be called The Resource, right?
That's right.
But you're like, listen, that's not the moneymaker. This is the moneymaker, Mr. Jay Pitts.
Well, we converted the podcast to a radio show where we actually put out over the air here. We did that about a year and a half. And yeah, I just kind of felt like, when it was on local radio, we needed to have the name involved.
That's interesting. So you're in Louisville, out there with Kelsey Radcliffe. And I'm going to get into a few of your stats, but that I didn't realize that you had done that. So tell me, what is that? What goes into that? Is it like a weekly show that you guys negotiated time on, the local news station?
Yeah, it was a time buy on one of the local, talk radio stations that was owned by iHeart, and it was a great experience. We got a lot of listens, we got a lot of referrals to the podcast because we still own the content, so we would post it on our socials, right, and we post it on our podcast as well. And yeah, so it was great. It was a great experience. Just ultimately kind of ran its course, and we decided to kind of go back to the podcast world, solely at the end.
Really?
It's a little more challenging, as you can probably imagine. Schedule management is a big part of what I do, making sure that I don't overcommit. And, driving downtown to a studio and, meeting a producer and doing all that when we can do it here in-house, made it a little more convenient for us.
So if you do a time buy, and I'm curious if you know the answer at some point, so like if you're a newer show and you don't have a built-in audience, or at least they don't think you do yet, you have to buy time on the air. At what point do they pay you to have your show?
So I ask these questions and you never really get a straight answer.
Really?
Always got told that we were very good, which I don't know if they just told us that so we could.
So you keep buying time.
but there was people that didn't have any incentive. The producer, for example, said, "Hey, I produced some of the afternoon drive guys, and like you guys are good. Like you guys they're pretty natural." And I always wondered, like, if we got enough traction, would they want to pay us, or would they at least, let us do the show for free, like not pay the money? Never got there, but I'm curious.
So I heard a stat yesterday, actually, and I haven't looked into this, but it's interesting that it's an interesting number. So for podcasts, now you can get sponsorships. We're actually about to launch some sponsorships for the podcast. But for a platform to pay a podcast, do you know how many downloads an episode has to get to before you can get a single cent for a podcast?
No, I have no idea.
10,000 before you can even have the conversation. So like for Spotify, Apple, now that's the stat I heard. I haven't verified it. Seems high, but yeah.
So 10,000 downloads per
and
episode. I
don't even know if that's per episode or if just once you hit 10,000 downloads. I just heard it in passing, and I was like, well, it's interesting that they're throwing out an actual number for the platform. I'm going to do some digging on it. I always love throwing things on the podcast that I can't verify, and people are driving in their car screaming like, that's not the right number.
I love it. No, I love that idea too. Now, we could and had the opportunity, and I've actually had people approach us about local sponsors paying for ad spots on the podcast or on the radio show when we were on the radio. We've never taken any money. I never found that wasn't the reason why I did this. Once upon a time I had, maybe some aspirations of trying to break out nationally. It's kind of why we went with a non-local,
right?
Didn't use my name, didn't use a local reference in the original title. But we had some big national guests. I had Jay Thompson, the director of agent relations for Zillow. I had founders of, large real estate tech platforms as guests. I had, like agent influencer types with millions of followers and things like that. We interviewed these people. I had Tom Ferry on the podcast.
Yeah.
Interviewed the CEO of Remax on my podcast once upon a time. I mean, really cool guests.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I never wanted to put tens of thousands of dollars per episode in advertising to push it out.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't why I was doing it, and so we had never got traction. So here we are.
Well, you've obviously done a great job and you've repurposed it back into selling real estate. You're the number one team in Kentucky with 170 million sold just last year. Tell me about your journey briefly, taking over what I believe was your father's business.
Well, I started, he mentored me. I started essentially a new team in a new market that mimicked everything I had learned by observing him in a much smaller market, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So my father was Jeff Pitts, great agent, legendary agent. I think feel safe in saying that, in a small town, Elizabethtown, Kentucky.
Elizabethtown, the movie.
Yeah, there was a movie, unfortunately, or
I bet with the small town, I wonder if they get excited at first that a movie's coming out with their title, and then they hate it.
And then they watch the movie and they're like, "Oh, okay." Which the funny thing is, they shot next to none of the movie in the actual town.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They shot. I want to say in Richmond, Kentucky. They shot quite a bit. Cynthiana, Kentucky, something that had like this really quaint downtown. E-Town's just wasn't good enough, I guess. They shot a lot at E-Town. Yeah, they shot a lot at the Brown Hotel in Louisville as well, which is a legendary kind of hotel. But anyway, yeah, Dad was great. He was on the Wall Street Journal top 10 list before Real Trends. That became the Real Trends list. That was in 2005. So he had like 500 transactions in E-Town in 2005.
Wow.
Which was crazy numbers for back then.
Yeah.
So when I got into the business in January of 2008, December of 2007, I knew I wanted to build a team, and somebody had shown me the ropes. So I just kind of went about executing step by step. And, here we are, 17 years later?
Did you steal a lot of his techniques? I mean, he was selling in a smaller town. He probably had different relational, or I mean, maybe not. Maybe you guys had the same relational tactics.
So one thing, and this is actually one of the best one of the best reels I've ever put out, was the difference between brand engagement and direct response marketing. And I think when you consider real estate and residential real estate specifically, and certainly newer to the industry agents, if not brand new agents, understanding the distinction between the two is incredibly important, right? Because everybody wants to work with people they know, like, and trust. They want to work with family members and friends and referrals and people that trust them, right? People that hold them in high esteem. But it takes time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I always tell new agents, like, you have an identity to the people that know and like you. And that is not real estate at this point, because you've been a real estate agent until right this very moment. So they have you blind to something else, and you're going to have to re-identify yourself, and it takes time. So what we've been very successful at doing is something that Dad was ahead of his time on, was direct response marketing. He would run ads that would produce phone calls. Now, his might have been Homesbook magazine ads or newspaper advertising.
Sure.
So that pushed phone calls, sign calls to a 1-800 number that then, referred back to an agent for pricing information. Yep. And he used, phone sales techniques to get appointments and get face-to-face with people, because he understood that the vast majority of buyers that don't have an agent will work with the first agent they meet that they find to be credible. And so he was very successful in teaching agents how to do that. So for me, it started off that way in 2008 and 9.
What was your version of direct response marketing?
Well, I had bank foreclosure listings. Mm-hmm. So it was literally sign calls. I had, probably ahead of my time, I had a custom website that listed nothing but bank foreclosure homes right? So people, and I marketed that website to get site visits and then would convert those to calls.
Yeah.
Soon it became Zillow and Realtor.com and, Facebook advertising and,
Mm.
all types of different social media based marketing, skills that were designed to produce inbound phone calls. And
Are there sorry to interrupt, but are there products right now or websites right now that do that? Or would that be something that I could steal in my own market, like literally right now?
you could do it on your own, but there are certainly platforms that exist and have a lot of experience
Yeah. I mean, you can
doing just
sort
that.
out bank-owned properties on Zillow or some of these
Yeah,
other big. Yeah.
true. There's not that many. Bank-owned properties is really tough right now because there's just not many that exist. The
Right.
content appreciation that we've received over the last number of years means that foreclosure, it it's a really unfortunate option for very few people right now. It's not like it was in 2008, right? But right now, just the absolute best, right, at direct response is Zillow.
Yeah.
There is no competitor. Honestly, Realtor.com doesn't even compete. They're good,
Mhm.
but it's a distant second. Distant
But
second.
you focus most of your time when you're coaching your team not on converting those as much as the relational side, like, making
Well,
sure or maybe both.
we so we tell an agent new to the industry because the majority of my team is when they came to me were brand new to the industry.
Yeah. Why is that? Do you think they see how much fun you're having? They're like, "I wanna be a part of that team?"
I think so. I think they think we're having fun. I think Gen Z and millennial agents, they want to be in a fun workplace, but they also want to be somewhere where they have a mentor that they feel is credible. They want the people around them to look like themselves, to sound like themselves. They don't want to be preached at by an agent that's been at it for 40 years. It tells
Yeah.
them all their instincts are incorrect. So I think that's something to do with it. But yeah, we always tell brand new agents that you have two jobs, right? Your job is to increase awareness of what you do within your network, but also to increase the size of your network. So
Mm.
we increase the size of our network with leads. Simultaneously, we are increasing awareness within our network. And that so within a shorter period of time than the industry would average, you're then working predominantly referral and repeat business.
So, these are the focuses of coaching your team. At what point, because I imagine do you still sell real estate yourself?
I do. I do.
Um, how do you focus your time when you get to being as big as you are with having the number one team in the state of Kentucky? You're doing 170 million. What's the average transaction price, sale
About
price?
300, about 300,
So
about
that's a
300.
lot of homes.
A
How
lot
do
of houses.
you how do you split your time? You've got a podcast, you've got your team, you've got your own sales, and you take social media and content pretty seriously as well. How do you what kind of time blocking system do you have to know that you're putting all the right time into the right buckets?
Well, I'm a principal broker and I own the brokerage as well. And that
Yeah.
brokerage, my team is 40 agents. My brokerage is 110.
Hmm.
I've got 110 agents I manage as a principal broker, and then we've got a 500 unit property management company too, and a mortgage operation. So,
So how
um,
much time are you spending in all of those?
well, that's a great question. The most active time I spend is in the sales team, which is somewhat overlap, right? Because when I manage the sales team, I'm managing 40 of the brokerage agents. The second
Yeah.
most time I spend is probably on the other 70 real estate agents. Um, I kind of count the podcast and the content as part of that because I use it for training purposes. I have an agent facing podcast mostly, right? Where we talk about real estate in the industry from an agent's perspective. So a lot of the content that we put out is the same thing that I'm putting out in the training class that I run on Monday and the training class I run on Friday, the training class I run every other Wednesday. So I get to kind of repurpose the content or rehearse the content, if you
I was
will.
gonna say, do you view any of them as dress rehearsals?
It's kind of like that, really.
Yeah.
I'll sit here and talk to you today about some of the similar things that I was talking to my team in our team meeting yesterday.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is what it is, right? And that's all fun. So, time blocking was your original question. I don't know that blocking is really it. As much as routine and systematic approach to my day,
Mm.
right?
So every day,
Every
part
single
of
day, I do the same thing at the same time, and the week that expands to the week, right?
yeah.
So, like for example, I drop my kids off at school every day. That is really important to me that I see them first thing in the morning. I don't want to be the dad that's gone at 6 a.m. and never sees his kids wake up. So I wake my kids up, I feed them breakfast, I take them to school every day. I drop them off at 7:30, I go straight to the gym. I work out for an hour, usually from like 8 to 9. I run home, I shower, I'm in the office by 10, right? Now I'm up at 5 or 5:30, but I'm not in
What
the
are you
office.
doing for those 2 hours before your kids go to school?
Usually catching up on email. I like to have a clean email inbox in the morning. Um, if it's, agent issues that I can push out like written communication and catch up on those kind of things, like problems from the night before or something that I need to address. Um, I might, read the Wall Street Journal. Catch up on X and, get news and things like that. I mean, like, there is some me time in there for sure. Drink some coffee, drink a protein shake, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's what I do in the morning. That's a combination of those three things. And then take the kids, go to the gym. I'm in the office by 10. Everything programmatic starts at 10. So Monday, team meeting, 10 o'clock. Wednesday, tactical training, 10 o'clock. That's every other Wednesday, I should say. In the in-between Wednesdays, we do small group meetings, 10 o'clock, with the different groups of agents we have in the brokerage. Fridays, Friday roundtable, 10 a.m. Always. Recruiting meetings, Tuesday or Thursday at 10 a.m. Right?
Why'd you choose 10? Is it because of your schedule? And since you want to make you're shaping your schedule the way you want it, and so 10 o'clock is the first time you can meet with your team and you want to meet with them first thing, is that how you created that time?
Yeah. Well, number one, I knew they would appreciate it more than if I made it 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
and I would probably get better attendance. But yeah, I mean, I didn't set out to go to the gym between 8 and 9 a.m. In fact, that time is probably not very convenient. I would rather get started earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the
Right.
only time I'm going to be able to consistently and routinely get to the gym as often as I would like. And I get to do it right after I take my kids to school, which is another priority.
Which is the first priority.
Which is the first priority.
Yeah.
So I'm handling two very important things. And I will say, you mentioned my dad. I lost him in 21. He never exercised. He didn't take care of himself. He worked too much. And so I vowed when he got sick that like that wouldn't happen with my kids. You know what I mean? And I really started. I was better than him already, but I started getting very serious about intentional about taking care of myself.
Sorry to hear that. You're when you vowed to be better, what all did that include besides working out?
I'm not perfect, but the diet has improved, right? It's not great. I still love fried chicken, right? I mean, it is what it is.
That's your pitfall.
That's my vice. I still like to have a beer on Friday night, I'm not perfect.
But clean eating is something that you've been intentional on?
Yeah, I've been better.
How do you attack that? How do you attack clean eating? Do you try to follow a regimen? Do you do any
macros has been the best, and I fall in and out of. So this is an epiphany I had, right? I used to be the guy that would preach discipline, right, to everyone around me about the things that they were accountable to me toward. And then I could never find enough discipline within the things that should have been most important to me, like fitness or diet, right? And I'm still a long way away from where I need to be on diet. I'll be honest about that. But what I realized is because my approach to discipline was all wrong, right? My approach to discipline was that I required perfection of myself. And I would go for 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, 6 months, who knows? Like it's maybe even only a week, doing things in a very perfectly disciplined fashion.
Mm-hmm.
But when I broke, which we all do, right? We all break at some point. That was my excuse to give up.
You fall hard.
And then it's 3 weeks. You go 3 weeks and then you break, and then it's 3 weeks before you get back on routine because you're punishing yourself for not
Hmm.
being perfect. When I
Yep.
allowed myself to not be perfect at the gym, um, everything
Pours
fell into
out everywhere else.
everything fell into place there, and I've been, I would say, an average of 5 days a week for at least 3 years now.
You know what helped me, and this is not gonna. This is nothing to do with your routine because if your routine's working for you, I can see you on camera. You're very fit. It's probably working. For me, I had to put my workouts at near the end of the day because it impacted what I ate. And so
Oh,
if I work out hard in the mornings, I'm like, I got it. I'm good. I did what I need for the day. So like, I'm gonna reward myself with whatever
yeah.
I feel like eating for lunch, and then that would pour into dinner. Well, I already screwed up lunch, and so by putting my workouts at 3 or 4, that allows me to, or it forces me to eat well because I don't want to feel like crap during that workout. And then as soon as I'm done, I'm eating again. And so I don't know that I'll always be on this, but I discovered carnivore and Instagram attacked me. Instagram attacked me. I started following this one person on carnivore. I didn't know much about it. I honestly just thought that all they ate was meat, and I've been educated through the attacking of Instagram reels, and I'm all over it. At least in this day and age, I've been doing it for I don't know a couple months now, and I truly believe in some of the healing properties of that.
I'm very intrigued. I've yet to try it. Now, I honestly, I think what has kept me from doing it is probably, I've got 3 young kids and my
Yeah,
wife, and, like, I don't know that I have allowed enough time to be as adamant about it and do the shopping and the preparation completely separate from my meals with my
yeah,
my kids.
yeah.
And I know how much work it's going to be, and I just haven't made space for it yet.
Well,
But
and here's the other thing that I've been thinking about a lot too, because that's very real. We just had a goal setting webinar, and the number one takeaway was if you don't include your spouse or anyone else that is actually involved, if you set this goal, you're not going to achieve that, and you're going to strain those relationships. And I
yeah,
did that because I got all excited about carnivore, and I came home, and my wife made this awesome meal, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to eat that. That did not go
now
over
she's
well.
disappointed, yeah.
So then it took a couple of weeks, and then I went back and I did it the right way, and I explained, hey, listen, this is what I want to do, and this is why I want to do it. In fact, I'm going to cook alongside you, but I'm going to make my own. But the more I get into it, the more I'm like, okay, kids need different nutrients than we do, and I haven't done enough research to find out. But what I'm eating is meat, eggs, cheese, and fruit. And that's like at least the modern version of what I've seen. I don't know why kids can't eat that. And every time mom's not here and dad's making the meal, they love it. Let me tell you, like you get,
I can see that.
cut up steak and fruit and cheese. Who doesn't want that?
No, I'm with you. I guess I hadn't done enough research. I didn't know cheese was that might tip the scale for me. Cheese is nice.
Yeah, raw milk cheese. Now it's like anything. Like the more
Yeah.
aggressive you want to be with it. Like if you want to grow your own food in your backyard, it's probably going to be your best option. But like so there's degrees of like, do you eat raw milk cheese or do you like eat, the farther away you get from the processed cheese, the less likely it
It's
is to
not
be.
Kraft singles, Kraft American
No.
singles that I talk about.
Yeah,
Probably.
exactly. So yeah, worth noting. I mean, here, where are we? 2024. This is as far as Remington's notes got him. So we'll see what an
Okay.
episode next year looks like. But so far I love it, and all the people that I follow. I mean, it's correcting ailments, and if it makes sense. I mean, you're eating naturally, and you're high protein and thermogenic. So anyway. We're talking about kids. I want to ask you. You told me in the pre-show that you coach your kids, and so I wanted to save this to get your raw, real reaction. I just coached my kids in 2 different sports. Um, One was soccer, which wasn't really coaching because they weren't really. It it's a mess at 6-year-old soccer, but basketball was a little bit more regimented. And I have 2 daughters that I was coaching. One of them took off, the other one just did not respond well to my coaching, and so then I was like, I really want her to be in sports. But I don't know that I'm the right person to coach her because she takes advantage of the emotional relationship, and she needs someone who is just going to coach her like someone else. I don't know. How do you feel about that? You're coaching. How many of your kids are you coaching?
Well, so I mainly coached my oldest. My daughter is not super. I mean, she's in gymnastics, which I know nothing about, and
Yeah.
If you could see me, I'm 6'4", 240 pounds, and I did not there's nothing gymnastic about me. So wouldn't even know what to do. I try to help her. I go to some of the lessons. I hear what the coaches tell her, and then I try to, work with her at home a little bit. It's not the extent of what I do. She's also in Girl Scouts. My wife is a troop leader, so they get some good quality time there. It's the boys, but one of them's only 4. He has, like you mentioned, 6-year-old soccer. We're in the middle of 4-year-old T-ball right now.
Yeah.
We just finished with basketball with 4-year-olds. Well, he is a very large, he's very big. He's a stereotypical third child. Big, he's seen Big Brother do everything. He wants to do everything.
Mm.
So he looks like a 6-year-old. He's just not coordinated like a 6. He's very coordinated for a 4-year-old, not coordinated like a 6. But he was playing against 6 and 7-year-olds in basketball, and that was a mess. Fun,
Yeah.
but a mess.
Yeah.
But mainly it's my 11-year-old. He was on he goes to Catholic school. He was on the 5th and 6th grade A basketball team, and I was the head coach of that team.
Yeah.
He's a 5th grader, so he got to play up with the 6th grade. So I was the head coach of that team. I'm an assistant coach on his travel baseball team.
Yeah. So he responds pretty well to your coaching.
He does. It's not without conflict. I know some kids, they cannot have their dads coach.
Why?
Again, I think you touched on it with that emotional, whether dad or child is preying upon the relationship, one of them is usually guilty of it. And it's too much emotionally for the kids, especially when you're trying to do high level athletics. And most of my experience in this comes from the baseball side of things. It's where I've seen it happen most, is some of the coaches and their kids, they just don't get along. Like dad wants to hold son accountable. Son doesn't want to be held accountable, at least not by dad. Right. There's back talk. There's ignoring the coaching.
Right.
In their relationship spirals. And it's something I just swore I would never let happen.
Sure.
I would step away.
Yeah.
My 11-year-old is, he's preteen now. He's getting bigger. He's getting older. He's a little more resolute in his own opinions, but it hasn't gotten bad yet. But when we get those teenage years and he starts having real strong opinions, if our relationship ever suffers, I'll step away.
Yeah.
But so far, he's one of the more diligent kids that I coach, and he's a hard worker, and I hold him accountable. I'm harder on him than I am anybody else, and he has responded positively to it, not negative. So I've been fortunate up until this point.
I got to ask, you were a collegiate baseball player, right?
Yeah.
And so now you're coaching your kids. At the risk of creating a controversial reel, what are your thoughts on participation trophies?
I'm not a fan.
Not a fan?
I'm not a fan. I just think that it is incredibly important to help kids learn how to lose and win gracefully. I don't mind kids that are upset by losing. In fact, I think it's a good thing that they're upset by losing. There's a lot to be learned about the simple difference between winning and losing. It should hurt. It should hurt. But kids ought to be able to process hurt and disappointment, in my opinion, as a father, right? So trying to make everybody feel good about everything is not the way the world works.
Have you been in a league that gave away participation trophies? Have your kids gotten any of them?
Yeah, 5 or 6.
Yeah.
If I
Were you okay at that age? So I'll give you some perspective of where I was at, because I was hard against it for all the reasons why most people are against it. It's not the real world, doesn't teach them winning and losing, like you said. And I was hard against it. I was reading this book. I think it's Eric Davis, Raising Men. And this guy's a Marine. I didn't even like the whole book, to be honest. It was just so aggressive on how to raise men. I didn't subscribe to everything he was saying. But he got to the participation trophy, and I'm thinking this guy's going to be hard against it. He actually said that participation trophies, when kids are younger, there's a time for it, because if you're rewarding the behavior of trying, then you should reward that behavior. But there comes a time where you transition from trying to actually being rewarded for the results. And I had never heard it put like that in the book. It was put a little bit more eloquently. And I've
Yeah.
been munching on that a little bit. And I was thinking about one of my daughters, and I really wanted her to try and give her best. And for whatever reason, she wanted that trophy. And that was the vehicle. I don't know if that's unhealthy. I don't think it's unhealthy to
I think I
reward
can buy
trying at
that.
some age.
I think at the age you legitimately start keeping score, well, then there's a winner and a loser, and we need to be honest about which that
Mhm.
is. But like, they don't keep score in T-ball. My 4-year-old is going to get a trophy at the end of the year,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with that. I want him to be excited to be a part of something.
Yeah.
And mentally, he's not really now he's again a third child, and he's well on his way to being competitive beyond his years. So he's like, "Did we win?" He asked me, "Did we win?" Um, and I said, "Well, buddy, we don't keep score at this age." And he's like, "But did we win?"
I love it.
And so I've had to start answering the question. So what I do, thankfully, in the moment, I was quick. That day, he had been very. It's about focus, right? If
Mhm.
you can focus your energy and attention on the task the entire time we're doing the task, that's a win. So I
Yeah.
told him we won because he had done well that day. Well, the following week he didn't. And so I told him, said, "No, buddy, we didn't win this week." And he asked why. And I said, "Well, you didn't really stay focused,
Mhm.
right? Like you were, you know,
Picking
uh,
dandelions.
yeah, you were. I mean, I don't think he was picking dandelion. Anyway, he was probably sitting on the bench waiting for his time to hit and was like climbing the fence,
Yeah. Yeah,
But,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
either way, I think at that age you have to keep it fun.
Yeah.
You have to keep it fun, and if they can focus, if they can just focus, that's a win.
Mm. Well, speaking of winning and losing, the last question I had for you is around what's going on with the lawsuits. And I know you have a pretty strong take feeling about this being a positive or negative thing for realtors. And I want to hear your take on your response to the lawsuits.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot that can be taken from it, a lot that can be discussed. I wasn't a huge fan of the way NAR handled the settlement. I will say a lot of people misinformed. There's two real meaningful changes as a result of the settlement, if approved, which supposedly, as of this past week, preliminary approval has been issued. I don't really know what that means. I didn't know there was a preliminary approval step, but that's what all the websites tell me. So I'll tend to believe it. I think the removal of the commission from the MLS creates an enormous opportunity for really good marketers. Um, because really you're just making the information harder to get. There is no removal of the seller's ability to compensate buy side realtors.
Right.
Sellers can still offer cooperating commissions. So the really good listing agents, the really good marketer listing agents are going to probably get an outsized amount of attention to their listings because they're really good at marketing those that have cooperating agent commissions. Um, so I think that's an enormous opportunity. Honestly, this whole thing for me is about leveling up, right? Our industry, we have tolerated low barriers to entry or even celebrated low barriers to entry for a long time. We have tolerated and celebrated the part-time nature of many, many real estate professionals. We've tolerated low levels of continuing education. We haven't ensured that, as real estate professionals, that the service the consumer gets is a high level service, right? Stats aside, I'm pretty good at this, right? I've been pretty good at this for a long time. And to think that when your commission is negotiable, but yet the guy or girl that just got their license, they're taking their first listing and they don't know what they're doing at all. They have no mentorship. Brokerages have abdicated a lot of responsibility. Principal brokers have abdicated a lot of responsibility. Splits have compressed to the broker, incentivizing the broker to offer less service, less accountability, less oversight. So again, that person can walk into someone's living room and pre-settlement walk out with a signed listing agreement with the same compensation that I would get, right? That I would negotiate, right? And I just, the consumer doesn't always get, it's not always apples and apples, right?
Mhm.
So what I think this will do is require that leveling up. I'm on record saying I wish that, Board of Realtors dues were $25,000 a year. I'd gladly pay it, right?
Versus what? What are they now?
Oh, like 1,500?
Yeah.
I mean, so you can 10x the cost to be a realtor, and I'm still going to be an agent.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the thing that makes me so resolute in saying that is that I know my competition won't tolerate it because they're not as serious about doing this as I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm left with as a result of the settlement, there are estimates that as much as 50% of realtors will leave the industry. I don't know if I believe that or not, but I do believe when you compress commissions substantially on one side of the transaction, the buy side, after they've already been compressing over the last few years naturally, you compress them further. I do think there's less money to go around and less people stay in the industry. But I think what that means for somebody like me is a bigger share market.
I'm kind of surprised about how long that's taking. I would have really thought that the fall off would have been for this year. From the last 18 months, I would have thought that this year, but at least in India and everyone else I've talking to, the fall off has not happened yet. So I'm wondering how many months or years it's going to take for people to not make a paycheck to be like, maybe I shouldn't do this.
Well, it's interesting. Kentucky did this. I'm licensed in Indiana, and I think they were already doing it. Kentucky went to 2-year license renewals in 23. So there's a lot of people that paid to renew their license for 2 years in 23 pre-settlement.
Interesting.
Right. And pre-downturn, which, our market was down unit sales 21% last year, 23 versus 22. Now my team was up. So I haven't seen the exodus, but our market hasn't seen it either.
But
And
I think 25, if it's a 2-year renewal, it's like 25 might be the year.
It could be 25. And I think it's still already happening. I just think it is hard to get a good number. MLSs don't readily share their roster, their membership numbers. It's really hard. You got to kind of read between the lines in most cases. And you can understand why, right? Like they don't want the perception that people are exiting the industry. That's bad for business.
Yeah.
From their perspective, but I do think it's coming. I really do. And I think, when we take the commissions off the MLS and we make buyers agents, which on average, okay, that's where the new, less experienced, less credible agents start is in buy side representation. When you start taking away the commissions on that and you force them to present an agency compensation agreement and get it signed by the client, that's going to intimidate a lot of people. They're going to beg out. And I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to be left with the real true pros.
Well, I appreciate your answer and being bold in your answer. You're a bold guy. If you guys want to find some more of Jay Pitts, where can we find the Jay Pitts show?
Yeah, you can find it on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on Spotify. Probably easiest to search my name, just Jay Pitts, JayPitts. You can find me on Instagram at Jay Pitts Realtor, on TikTok at J_Pitts. Those are the places we put out our short form content. You can find me on YouTube, obviously, as well. But Instagram, is where we're seeing a lot of our content engagement lately.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I'm going to push this at the very end of the episode like we do in the middle of the episode. And on all the emails we're sending you, please email us at podcast@realproducersmag.com to tell us who you want on the show, what do you want us to talk about, and your thoughts on Jay's take on participation trophies. We'll see you next time.